Andy Beshear is now the betting favorite, as of him
I
tweeting.
gotta say, that's what I said. Like,
I said I have a tweet of mine on July 4th calling it, so
There's a
I have that bookmarked. What'd you say, Matt?
apparently there's security buzz around him. So
I saw that. Yeah, I mean, look, I like Walls a lot. I think Bashir is definitely my second choice out of the people being considered, though.
somebody I am the show. I didn't pull it out, but somebody I am the show saying Harris is gonna, in Pennsylvania doesn't matter or something. It's going to be Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. The strategy, it seems to me, that the DEI pick for vice president will be someone who is not going to be targeting urban areas where Democrats mostly get their votes. They're going to be sent out, like, for instance, they sent Beshear to Forsyth County in Georgia. A Democrat will not win in Forsyth County. But there's two strategies electorally. One is to get as many of your votes as possible in blue areas if you're a Democrat. And then to depress or to limit the size of the win that the Republican will get in red areas. If you can send in a vice president and they could basically campaign in non-democratic areas in a state. So, for instance, like Georgia, which, Ossoff claims now is in play.
Megan Thee Stallion is doing a concert with Kamala Harris in Georgia. Is it today, Bradley? Or I mean, I know that's maybe not.
So whatever. The point. The point being that that's going to drive out the vote in Atlanta. But when you get to Forsyth County, the other part of the job is, how do we minimize Trump's win there? You're not looking to win. You're looking to cut 2 or 3 points off of what he did in 2020, even 1 point off in 2020. In fact, even if you keep it at the same level as 2020 in his strongest areas, there's reason to believe that you're going to win that state. Just because of the size of cohort of voters has grown in Democratic areas, has shrunk in Republican areas, just based upon age alone. And so that's the theory here, is that your vice president's going to go in and maybe not necessarily, get you, is just going to inhibit the running up of the votes, because it's when you underperform in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh where you're in trouble. But if you perform at the normal rate and can just make the other person underperform slightly in their strongest areas, that's how you win. All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 210 area code, pole position. Who's this?
Good afternoon, Sam and Emma. This is John from San Antonio. I don't believe in triangulation, but I'd like to hear your opinion weighing the possibility of a V pick delivering their home state versus picking someone who doesn't come from a swing state. I believe if Harris has a decent polling lead, she could feel freer to pick someone who doesn't come from a swing state. I'd like to hear your opinion on whether North Carolina will be in play.
Well, Cooper's already taken himself out of it, but why don't we hear from Emma? Since
I don't know. I mean, I think that her play is Midwest 3, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, maybe Georgia. I'd prefer that because then it takes Kelly out of the running, and then she can just not have to frickin' try to fight Trump on the border, because that's the two polling issues that everyone's saying in the press that are the things that are the most people are concerned about her, is that she's too liberal, which is probably, stand-in for she's a black lady, and also the fact that she had, when she came into the Senate, she proposed things like she co-sponsored the Green New Deal. So I don't know if she wants to fight on that terrain. If she's smart, she won't do what Biden did, which was just like cede everything, every right-wing kind of talking point about the border and try to drum up more enthusiasm on terrain that she feels more comfortable in. And I think that fits better into the Midwest 3 and then those 2 southern state targets. And then hope that abortion in Arizona is the issue that is actually more salient, because that's an abortion measure is on the ballot. And that could, I think, be a good higher floor for her than maybe current polling is indicating. And she could direct her resources towards the southeast.
Yeah.
If you're interested, John, I will give you my analysis, but I understand if you don't think it's necessary at this time.
No, I'd like to hear that.
I think this is a situation where you do no harm with your vice presidential pick, because we can't really anticipate the change in the polls has been so dramatic in 6 or 7 days. You can't really anticipate where she's going to be in polling, by September. But I think the big thing is you don't want to in any way inhibit the momentum and change the narrative. And the press is going to be looking to change this narrative at one point, because that's just the way you gotta turn the story every 3 or 4 weeks with this type of stuff. So I feel like a guy like Beshear could go in and do what I had talked about earlier, which is mute Trump's running up the score in more rural areas. And I think like that's what you want from the vice president. You want the vice president to be able to sort of like, maybe not necessarily, to have a broader impact in different areas. And I just feel like Shapiro is not going to speak to rural voters. And Harris is already, the Democrats don't have I don't think there's going to be a problem in going into, urban centers and more densely populated places. I think you want to mute the margins in rural areas. And I just feel like a guy with that twang, it's a DEI hire. And if you're going to do the DEI hire, really do it. And so, for me, Beshear or Walz sort of achieve both those things. But Beshear looks younger, and it will highlight how old Donald Trump is. But Walz, I think, could really, help undermine. In the back of my head, I also, though, wonder, politicians operate in their best interest. And one of the things that I think influenced some of the governors who are willing to come out and say, I want Biden to be the nominee is that they're thinking, okay, if Harris wins and her presidency is a success, there may not be an opening for 12 to 16 years.
Yeah.
For somebody else.
Biden kind of screwed them in a way that I, didn't anticipate by being so definitive and just kind of dropping his resignation and then drop out on that Sunday and then endorsing Harris 15 minutes later. They were caught flat-footed. They couldn't organize a way to kind of make their case at the convention, and then by then, Harris had basically already secured all the delegates that she needed. That's part of why I was a little critical of Bernie's strategy of going and stumping for Biden publicly. I wish he had been using that time behind the scenes when she needed the support to leverage policy positions in the back room. But we'll see. Maybe that is still happening. I don't know.
Have you read my email? Says first he throws in Sam's face he's going on letter hack again, and then he snubs Sam about his analysis. It's just insult after insult from John.
What say you, John?
I'll give you the last word, John.
Yeah, let's talk about some other things about the. Yeah, I completely disagree with what you're saying about the Harris policy about going to rural counties and trying to shave off points. Historically, that has not worked well at all. You need to drive turnout in your base in the major cities. If you look at Clinton's loss, it's because she did not drive turnout in the major cities. It's very hard.
No, I'm not talking about Harris do that. I'm talking about where you deploy your vice president.
Yeah, I just don't think that historically that has not worked, and I just don't think it's going to work again.
Who tried that?
I think that people kind of. Well, Beto O'Rourke tried it. I mean, it was a difficult
but no, I'm
thing
saying
for him to win.
I'm not saying Beto. I'm not saying Of course, Harris should be driving out her voters in urban centers. But I'm saying, what should the function of the vice president be electorally?
I agree with Sam here, John.
Do you think it should be Shapiro?
Oh, no.
Well, I mean, from an ideological point of view, no. But, I mean, if Harris loses and she loses Pennsylvania, I
agree.
No,
I agree.
A lot of
but
people
do you think,
are going to be saying, why didn't she pick Shapiro? Because Shapiro is extremely popular. So it's a lot of it is just ideology versus the possible delivering of a state. And I mean, like I said, it's hard to pick. I'm not going to say for sure. I mean, I want somebody who's going to be a good surrogate and who's going to be good ideologically. But if she loses, what's going to happen?
Well,
then?
no, I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, that's what we're talking about. What's the best strategy to win? I can't help but think that Shapiro might cause a significant amount of dissent with those younger voters and those younger activists who are going to be the troops who are going to be driving people out to vote. Now, I know he may be popular in Pennsylvania, but you may create problems in other states. That's why I say, don't do no harm first, it seems to me. Because I don't know how much, I mean, he might be a guarantee of delivering Pennsylvania. He might not.
I mean, he's extremely popular. I mean, again, I feel kind of bad about even saying this just because I don't agree with him, on Gaza. I don't agree with him on the teachers union. But if you look at how popular he is within the state, I mean, he is very, very popular.
But John, he's popular in Pennsylvania, and they're already doing this protracted audition process where he's stumping for her. This is what I'm hoping she does. She's having your cake and eating it too, as Matt said just now. You can drive up turnout in Pennsylvania with this long kind of spotlight on the state. Minnesota, I mean, that's already in the bag at this point. Hope. But, I mean, it's a 10-point lead in the Fox News poll. We'll see. I just don't think with Walz being like this public if it's going to go down from there. And so then you drive up the Midwest, and then you can basically have a do no harm person who mitigates that kind of stuff in states like North Carolina and Georgia. And Beshear, he's got a Southern accent. He's a white guy, picket fence, 2.5 kids, that kind of deal. I find him unoffensive. I feel like that's probably the safest pick for her.
Let me ask you, when you say Shapiro is popular in Pennsylvania, what do you mean by that?
Well, look at his approval rating, 61%.
Is it 61%?
That's what I just read. This I think it was yesterday or this morning.
I'm looking at a poll of. I'm looking at a poll that says 49% of Pennsylvanians surveyed approved of Shapiro, while only 31% disapproved from Emerson. Do you have a different poll?
Okay.
I mean, 49%, that's a great net positive, but to assume that all 49% of who approve him think that he would be a good vice president, I mean, if I'm in Pennsylvania, I might say, well, I don't want him to be vice president.
He also comes off like an asshole, just aesthetically. He comes off like an asshole. And this campaign is trying to portray itself positively.
Let me put it this way: Do you think that Mike Pence helped Donald Trump win?
Possibly a little bit, but I mean,
I think he did. I think he gave license to a huge cohort of Republican voters to overlook problems with Donald Trump. I think that he gave both assurance to the Koch brothers wing of the party, because he was a big AFP guy, and I think he gave license to evangelicals to vote for Trump. And this is a guy who was at 40% popularity in Indiana as governor, if I remember correctly, maybe 39%. And I guess my point is that a vice president, I don't know that there's any data that show that a vice president can deliver their home state. Maybe he can. But what a vice president does, in my mind, and we're seeing the opposite in terms of Trump, is that it's the first major decision, political decision, that has like retail, sold to the public. And it's about what's the narrative that's going to make her win. And does it feed into that narrative, or does it cut against that narrative? And right now, I would say the narrative that Kamala Harris has is she's a great advocate for abortion rights. She has managed to unify the party and is an acceptable choice to a broad range of constituencies. That to me seems like what the narrative is right now. And Shapiro supposedly, or at least there's a little bit of like a smudge on his sheen about his, covering up or not being responsive enough to a staffer's Me Too thing. That could be problematic. And he's got this stuff about Gaza.
And public schools.
And so does that begin to really harm the core brand proposition of Harris? I would suggest that it does.
Yep.
And so, maybe he can deliver Pennsylvania, but also on day one, I can tell you that he will create problems for her in maybe not huge ones, maybe not, certainly maybe not fatal. But when I think of Andy Beshear, when I think of like the constituency that's going to be upset about Andy Beshear, I can think of no one. He doesn't piss anybody off. And on some level, like, if I'm Donald Trump, I would have preferred maybe even Doug Burgum, because Doug Burgum, anyway, would be like, whatever, it's just about Trump. I sort of feel like right now, the key to Harris is that she has been able to shift the race back to it's a referendum on Donald Trump for the most part. And anything that she does that makes her candidacy, put under a microscope, I think I don't know if there's value there, but who knows? John, good luck tonight on the letter hack. Apparently,
can I just mention? Can I just a final statement? I'm not saying that we should pick Shapiro. I'm just saying that you have to weigh different things.
No, I know.
And so I think you both of you have a very legitimate point that if Shapiro is the pick, a lot of the left will be very angry, and you have to weigh that against actually picking him. But also you have to consider if Harris doesn't win Pennsylvania.
No. You and I agree about the crucialness of Pennsylvania, but what we're doing, and I know that you think I'm like a squishy centrist, apparently. You've already made that clear at the beginning of this call. But I'm simply arguing that he won't necessarily deliver Pennsylvania with a 49% approval rating. because, you know, he's not on the top of the ticket. There's a lot of data that suggests vice presidents don't deliver their home states.
And how does he
LBJ delivered in 60.
How does he play
I know,
outside
but-
of Pennsylvania? There is,
but-
like, let's be real too. There is anti-Semitism outside of outside. I mean, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't pick him, but that's something that she's going to be weighing if she thinks that the South is in play. And I also think he comes off like he's doing an Obama impression. I don't necessarily think that he, despite maybe having a lot of political capital in Pennsylvania, is a politician that broadens Harris's coalition. I actually think, like, when people talk about Buttigieg or when people talk about Shapiro, outside of Pennsylvania, which I think that they probably have some positive numbers about, I don't think that he broadens her coalition. He just may secure Pennsylvania for her.
Yeah, another thing that people have to consider is, you know, the VP is a heartbeat away from the presidency. So again, it's weighing, you know, the possibility that Harris, you know, could possibly die.
That's the October surprise, and then Biden is the nominee. I'm sorry.
Well, not necessarily before then,
joking.
but I mean,
I'm joking.
eventually, when, you know, if she becomes president, and so that's something else, you know, to make it, you know, the more ideological side, you know, to consider.
Sure. Well, not just that,
So-
too. Even if she, you know, statistically speaking, she's going to be fine in 8 years. But that next person's going to have the pole position, as it were, to be VP. John, I want to save your voice for tonight, for the letter hack.
For the primetime show.
Yeah, for your for the headlining act that
Yeah.
you're doing tonight. Appreciate the call, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot. Take
Bye.
care.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.